Malawi as a country has enjoyed quite a good relationship with the World Bank. We have seen so many developments happening and so many livelihoods touched and changed for the better economically. And in this foregoing, we have seen the World Bank introducing projects that will oversee the World Bank portfolio in Malawi, which consists of 30 IDA lending operations with a total commitment of amount of $3.39 million. This amount will have at least 8 projects that are going to go directly to the benefit of Malawians. My guest today is Dr. Firaz Rad, who is the country manager for World Bank, who is here to tell us more about what World Bank has brought to us in his tenure here in Malawi. Welcome, Dr. Firaz.
Thank you, Wawupi. It's great to be with you.
Thank you so much. Now, we have seen the World Bank here in action in so many years. And you have come from countries like Malaysia, Kuwait, and South Sudan. How would you fare? How would you service Malawi in this regard?
Well, let me first off thank you and thank MBC for having me on this program. And I'll start, I think, with the similarities between South Sudan and Malawi. And you can look at the poverty and income levels, and in a way they are close. I think Malawi fares better, but only slightly better. You also share a similarity with South Sudan in the kind of climate shocks that you are exposed to, and you see that with either too much water or too little water, whether in the form of cyclones and flooding or droughts. And I think there you see the similarities. Where the differences come in, I think, are when you look at the legacy of fragility, violence, and conflict in South Sudan. And so they have suffered tremendously over the last 60, 70 years. Prior to independence, there were 2 bouts of civil war after independence. And so that prevented them from advancing and then trying to advance their economy and pushing development in a very broad-based way. I think here in Malawi, you've had peace and stability since the 60s, and that is a blessing. That is an asset that should be preserved, conserved, and then leveraged more to promote broad-based growth and development for the country. And we are here to support the government of Malawi in trying to reform in the near term, and then to promote a long-term development agenda. The other countries that you alluded to, Malaysia and Kuwait, are upper income and high income countries, and they have been able to climb up the development ladder, especially Malaysia. Malaysia started at a very low base after independence, but they were able to go from low middle income to upper middle income, and they are at the threshold of reaching high income. And Kuwait has been a high income country because of the natural resources it has. But here in Malawi, I think it can take heart that many countries have been able to develop and to transition from one income status to another, from low income to middle income, and then to high income. And development, as one of my colleagues in the World Bank like to say, is not like instant coffee. It takes a long time for countries to develop it, but it really depends on the kind of preconditions that need to be there for countries to take off economically and to prosper. So that is where I have come from, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here in Malawi and to serve as country manager for the World Bank at this particular time.
Now, here in Malawi, just like you have said, that we are gradually progressing economically, and very soon we're going to reach the middle income and the upper income level. Now, having studied and reviewed the current support the World Bank is giving to the Malawi government, do you think the World Bank is responding to the challenges the country faces?
Yeah, and just to go back to something that you said, I think it will take a long time to reach middle income and high income country status. That takes decades. With the right policies and the right investments, especially in human capital, in education, in social protection, in health, and also in physical infrastructure, you can drive economic growth at rates that then will raise household incomes and reduce poverty in the country. On our side, we are doing our best to support the country doing two things: to respond to emergencies, the climate shocks that you have faced, the different cyclones, whether Anna or Freddy, or cholera, or the various shocks that you have contended with. And this year, the El Nino induced drought. So we have tried our best to position the World Bank to respond to those needs in support of the government's efforts. At the same time, we haven't lost sight of the important medium to long-term development agenda. And this goes back to the large portfolio that you spoke about, where across many different sectors we have investment operations that finance government-led projects to try to transform people's lives and livelihoods. And this covers infrastructure sectors, it covers human development, sustainable development, and also the financial sector and governance arrangements. And I had the opportunity during my visit here to Blantyre to visit many of the projects. And so we went down to the Capachira Dam, we saw the canal in the Shira Valley, and then we went to Chikwawa District Council to discuss a project that is trying to promote service delivery at a very local level. We visited different communities today that benefit from a watershed management project, and it was great to see that we're trying to support government's efforts to create a real change in people's lives. It does take time, it does take proper planning, but we saw a lot of inspired communities that do want to better their lives, and we're supporting them in various ways.
Mm-hmm. Now, having said that you're supporting the country in various ways, now, what's the balance between the financing and the Malawi 2063 vision? You have just said about the Capachira, which is financed by the World Bank. Now, you have been in the community, you have seen the growth and the changes that the Capachira is going to bring to the community, and the changes that it's going to bring in terms of the food security and the water management systems, and like you have said, to change the whole community setup as a whole. Now, here in Malawi, the area that you went to, Chikwawa, is full of climate shocks every year. We have little rain or more rainfall, but that side, it's more of the floods every year. Now, do you think we have started to build the resilience, or we are still in the response mode in that area?
So generally, just to go back to something you said about Capachira, I think we are now in the mode of trying to restore Capachira after the big shocks that the country experienced. And for us, what Capachira provides is a lot of energy, and you know, access to energy is quite a challenge still for this country, and we feel access to energy is a very important development agenda. The country has committed to trying to improve access by 2030 considerably, and we are behind this agenda. We are supportive of it because we feel without energy it's very difficult to drive economic growth, to improve people's lives and livelihoods. And that's why Capachira is one engagement we're involved in. We are also involved in the Patamanga project that hopefully will be going forward in the future. There are other efforts that we are trying to do in the energy sector. And for our institution as a whole, around the world, we have embraced this development topic, access to energy. And in fact, for the African continent, there is an initiative called Mission 300 to increase access for 300 million people on the continent and to give them access to energy. In terms of your question related to disaster response, the government does have an agency, DODMA, that is there and has an action plan to try to improve the preparedness of the country for crises and climate emergencies that come this country's way. And there are various efforts to improve its capacity, to give it resources so it can respond accordingly. And on our side, in the World Bank, we have various financing instruments that we have made available to the government. We have what we call a catastrophic deferred drawdown option, which is a credit line which immediately gives support to the government, and it decides how to use it to respond to emergencies. And we have other modalities. So I think the country is trying to do its best, but as you know, the climate shocks have come successively in waves over the last few years, and it has been difficult. And this is, I think, a challenge for the country, its people, and the development partners to try to support the country in terms of preparing for these disasters and responding to them, but not losing sight also of the medium-term and long-term development agendas, which are critical to drive prosperity in this country.
Mm-hmm. Now, the economy is at its slow pace here in Malawi, we should say so. And it's gradually going in there. The signs of recovery are there slowly. Now, the recent Malawi Economic Monitor recognizes the importance of the economic reforms and the fiscal disciplines. How realistic are these calls?
So, what would be, we have outlined in our report, the Malawi Economic Monitor, two central challenges for the country now in the near term. One are the climate shocks, as I mentioned. The other is macroeconomic instability. And we think these two challenges have to be addressed by the government, its partners, various stakeholders, to then make sure that the preconditions are there and exist for the ATM strategy to move forward, which is focused on agriculture, tourism, and mining, because without macroeconomic stability, where you have controlled inflation, you have an exchange rate that is stable, where investors really want to come in, it's very difficult to drive the ATM strategy forward in a very robust manner. You can do it, but it's difficult. There are constraints. So in our report, we highlighted the importance of pushing ahead with reforms to tackle macroeconomic instability, to provide the ground then to take off economically. And we focused on these climate shocks and to boost preparedness and to boost, I think, the country's readiness to deal with things like the food insecurity crisis that we are seeing now all across the country because of the El Nino-induced drought. So I think those are the central challenges that we identified in the near term. And once you take care of that, then you also have to think of some of the other enabling sectors for economic takeoff, like access to energy and then transportation networks, because to really get the ATM strategy going, you need the surrounding infrastructure to also support it, and that's why we are heavily vested in these sectors too.
Mm-hmm. Now, from your experience, which areas need investing to anchor economic growth and development here in Malawi for the growth of the ATM strategy?
So I think, as I said, and as ATM as an acronym lays out, agriculture, tourism, mining, possibly manufacturing, I think all of these sectors are terribly important to drive economic growth, to create jobs, to reduce poverty, ultimately to create greater equality in the country. But as I said, really to push forward with those sectors. The private sector would need macroeconomic stability. It would want to be reassured that there are plans to take care of the shocks that the country could experience, given these prior climate shocks that have come and visited the country on many occasions. So I think those are some of the preconditions. Others are these enabling factors that I mentioned, especially around infrastructure, access to energy, developing connectivity, especially transportation connectivity. So whatever you produce in the agribusiness sector, you want to make sure that you're able to sell that produce, but by taking it to a market, from the farm to a market, and also from a farm to a border. So those are very important. And then beyond that, then you have to make sure that their business environment is friendly enough, and conducive enough for the private sector to come in, to invest, and then drive economic growth and job creation. So I think that's how we see things. You try to take care of the short-term priorities, macroeconomic stability, preparedness in terms of disaster management, some of these enabling sectors, creating a business environment that is friendly and attractive to the private sector, and then really pushing ahead with the ATM strategy, which will ultimately then help the government reach the goals embedded in the 2063 vision that it has for itself.
Mm-hmm. Now, moving on from Malawi 2063, now, a lot of people, they think that the World Bank's financing is making Malawi accrue to more debt, which will be difficult to be serviced at the end of the day. Now, do you think this is factual, and are the assertions real?
So over the last 2 to 3 years, our financing has been fully dispersed on a 100% grant basis. So the money that comes through the International Development Association, IDA, over the last cycle has been, there have been grants, and the total envelope has averaged around $600 million per year. So it's a significant volume of financing that other countries have given to IDA, and then IDA allocates it to different eligible countries, one of which has been Malawi. So prior to the current IDA cycle, previously, it wasn't on a 100% grant basis. It was 50-50. 50 grant and then 50 loans, lending. But even the lending was done at very concessional terms. And so the development institutions usually give countries very long maturities and very low interest rates. But countries that face different imbalances and have financing needs have options. They could go to the market, and they could get financing from the commercial market. But as you know, the interest rates are very high. It's very expensive. The development financing institutions around the world usually have better rates, and as I said, the maturities are much longer. So the governments ultimately decide where to go in terms of making sure that they have financing to meet their development needs. And so the World Bank is one option of many different options out there. There are multilateral institutions, there are bilateral institutions, and so we are one player out of many. And we do our best to make sure that whatever money is dispersed, whether they are grants or they are loans, are used efficiently and transparently. And at the end of the day, they create results for the people of Malawi. I think that's the most important thing, that these projects are impactful and really transform people's lives in a positive way.
As you've said, the World Bank is one of many, but to be in a remarkable wording, we can say the World Bank has promoted enough job creation here in Malawi. That's a strategy to address poverty. Now, through the private sector investment that is current, the World Bank is financing or supporting this strategy. How are you faring with that? What can you say about that?
Well, we're trying, and as I said, I just got here about 2 months ago, so I'm learning about the portfolio, both on the IBRD side, the World Bank, but also, as you know, we have the International Finance Corporation, which is one institution within the World Bank Group. It deals directly with the private sector, and so it has different transactions and trying to support private sector activity in different sectors. One thing that we are looking collectively at, both us in the World Bank, but also the IFC, is the Patamanga project, which you know in the energy sector has transformative potential because of how large it is and how it would increase electricity generation capacity in the country. It would also enable the country, if implemented, to sell electricity to neighboring countries if the interconnectors are there. But this is the kind of investment project that we would like to see materialize, because it sends a very positive signal to other investors that really Malawi is open for investment in these kinds of transformative projects. So we are hopeful, we're very active, and we're working with the private sector and the government to enable these kinds of projects to go forward. So we are very supportive of private sector development and think this is the growth strategy of the future, that the government has to enable the private sector to come in across the board and to create jobs for the general population of the country, because the government can't create jobs for everyone. It has to allow the private sector to do that and for them then to create the prosperity that the country seeks.
Mm-hmm. Now, are the results being generated by World Bank financing impactful, sustainable, and transformative?
Well, we hope so. I mean, we are doing our best, as I said, to focus on projects across the different sectors, whether it's in sustainable development, human development, in infrastructure, in the financial institutions. So we have invested heavily in trying to effect change in these sectors. I think in the area of human capital, we've done a lot to promote the education sector. We're also in the health sector. We have a multi-donor development fund, a trust fund, that is supporting the social protection system in this country. And we think that the investments in human capital are probably the single most important investment that the country can make, because you need to invest in your people, your human capital, to really drive economic growth long term, and to make people competitive with the neighbors and the global marketplace. And so we have invested heavily to support the government to make changes in these sectors. But as I said, also in infrastructure, we talked about Kapachira, about the Shire Valley Canal that hopefully will irrigate the valley and then create economic opportunities through agribusiness opportunities that could be scaled up. So whether in the human capital sector or in sustainable development or infrastructure, we are doing our best to support the development priorities of the country, near term and also long term.
Now, as we are nearing to the end of this program, Unpacked, now all these challenges that Malawi face requires action. How do you think the country should move towards managing and addressing these economic challenges?
So I think it should do so with urgency, and this is one of the subtitles of our Malawi Economic Monitor, Reforming with Urgency, because the country needs to tackle some of these pressing agendas, and once it does and it stabilizes the economy, then we can focus on some of these enabling sectors that I mentioned, whether it was electricity or transport or water, and at the same time to push ahead with the ATM strategy to make sure that the country takes advantage of its natural resources to really push the agribusiness sector forward. It is blessed with a great lake, and that can be leveraged really to promote tourism in a transformative way. Mining as well. The country is blessed with so many minerals, so to develop the mining sector in a very efficient way. I think all of these agendas could be pursued with the idea of really realizing the goals of the 2063 vision. So this is how I see the priorities and how we can support them on the side of the World Bank in collaboration with other development partners and friends of Malawi.
As World Bank, and you're now here in Malawi, what's your final word to the Malawi nation as you work here in Malawi?
The economic planners responsible for the country should think long term. So, and you have done that already with the 2063 vision, and you have these 10-year plans, and now it's about really implementing them and thinking what the preconditions are for those plans to go forward and to be implemented effectively. And I'd like to say that the World Bank is a long-term partner of the Malawian people, the Malawian government. We've been here for many decades, and we will be with you for many decades going forward.
Thank you so much, Dr. Firas Riyad, for granting us this opportunity to engage with you here on Unpacked.
Thank you, Owopi.
Thank you. That's all we had today in this edition of Unpacked. I was talking to Dr. Firas Riyad, who is the country manager for Malawi. He has talked more on how Malawi can utilize its chances on getting more grants and how they can be able to engage in more economic, fulfilling engagements like the Mpatamanga, which is happening here under the World Bank funding. And this is Unpacked on NBC. My name is Waopi Mongulu. Until next week, I say goodbye and keep watching Unpacked.